There is a show being put on the end of next month up north, friends of mine. And they've got this kid. I won't lie to you, Jimmy. He's a bit warm. And he's a big lad. How do you feel about giving the weight away?
That's fine. Yeah, I'll take it, Joe. I'll take it.
He's dangerous, this kid. He hurts people. And that's what they pay the money for. They want to see him hurt people. But they want somebody in with him who can mix it up. They want their money's worth.
So, yeah.
I think I can get you your money. I tell them I've got an ex-ABA champion with me who's looking for a fight. Jimmy, you were one of the bravest kids I ever saw. The thing I don't know is what kind of nick you're in now. So if you take this, it's on your back. Whatever happens up there, you are on your own.
Yeah, I know.
And you're up for it, yeah?
Yeah, I'm up for it.
Right. I'll make the phone call.
Thanks, Joe.
Johnny Harris, writer and star of Jawbone, joins me now on the podcast on jasonsolomons.com. Oh, great thrill, Johnny, to see you. Great thrill to see your first movie. I'm going to say it's your first movie. I know you didn't direct it, but it is your first big movie that is your own thing that is out.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because you know, there's kind of like this invisible rule book that says, right, well, they directed it, or they produced it, or they, and that was, I think, the beauty of Jawbone was we didn't have any of those rules. You know, like Paul Weller came on board very early in the process. Normally,
it's his first film as well.
Yeah, and normally someone who's composing the score would watch the picture and then compose to it, you know, possibly, and or come in certainly later in the process. But we didn't have a rule book, so what was beautiful about that was almost immediately a collaboration developed. So as Paul was composing music, I could listen to it as I was writing, and it infused the writing, and vice versa. I'd send Paul the character notes and things as characters were developing.
And he really understood the process.
Oh, completely.
It's beautiful.
He was down the gym. He came down to McGuigan's gym just to listen to rhythms and stuff that he could incorporate within the soundtrack, to listen to all the sort of different rhythms of ropes skipping and leather hitting the floor and the chains on the punch bag, and that's where you got all those industrial sounds that you hear in the soundscape.
And you mentioned McGuigan's there as well. This is Barry McGuigan, who taught Daniel Day-Lewis to box in the box, which I thought was one of the best underrated boxing.
Yeah, and as always, Daniel Day-Lewis, you know, he was fantastic in it. The great Barry McGuigan, you know, a genuine legend of boxing. I read today, I think it was like 19 million people watched him win the world title back in the day.
It was at QPR, wasn't it?
That's right, Loftus Road, and his son Shane McGuigan, who I'd like to mention, because Shane's like one of the foremost trainers in the world at the moment. He trains Carl Frampton. I think he's the youngest trainer ever to train a world champion, and so I was very lucky. I got to spend 2 years.
Because you were a teenage boxing champion, indeed, Johnny. To
yeah,
your full title.
Yeah.
Were you ring rusty? Did you need to get back in there? Or
It was someone used a metaphor that it's like teaching someone who knows how to play the guitar to then play it left-handed, you know, and because I was an amateur, I was light flyweight, which for the non-boxing fans, like 48 kilograms. Like, I'm a lot more than that now, you know. Let's just say I'm a lot more than that now. And I boxed with a very amateur style, which is very fast and pacey and about scoring points.
Yeah, that ABA points system.
Yeah, whereas when you're a pro and you're, or you know, as Jimmy is in this, when he's fought unlicensed, you need to slow down and you need to be much more solid, and you know, and without getting too technical, we had to change a lot of things, and it was difficult at first. I'd go galloping around the ring like a flipping lunatic, and it was those guys' job to sort of really settle me in, and then also to change my body. I had the body of I'd just finished a TV series From Darkness, and I'd put weight on for that, and I'd had weight anyway. I was everything a middle-aged man should be, really, you know. And so they just had to we had to undergo a physical transformation. But we got in really early with them, and so over a 2-year period, really, not only did we start working on the physical and learning to fight again, but in doing that, something started to transform emotionally, and that was when I was developing the script as well. And in the end, Sandra McGuigan found us an office space upstairs from the gym. So Thomas Napper, our director, and I would be up there developing the film in the afternoon. I'd be in the gym of a morning training for fitness, and then of an evening I'd go down and spar and do physical work and get beaten up, and then go home. And this was all in Battersea, yeah. So it was all kind of in South London, and then we went up and filmed some of the interiors up in the Midlands, up in Stoke and Birmingham. which was just fantastic. We got some funding from up there that meant that we'd have to use those locations for filming. So we shot all the interiors up there.
I love how you, over the period, I kept in touch with you as you were putting this together. You bumped into you guys, it's coming together, and Ray Winston's on board, and Michael Smiley's on board, and Weller's on board, and McGuigan's going to train. And I'm thinking, Johnny's really building this, getting this together. What's the impetus for it, and over time? How do you keep focused on doing it? Because making a movie is tough, particularly here in Britain, and particularly this sort of movie. We're quite famous for sort of social realist movies, but we don't really make them anymore. They're not commercial.
You know what? I think we just threw the rule book away, and so normally what you'd have to do is you'd have to go out and get funding. Yeah. And it just all feels so formal, like it's so formal. It is a business, and I get that, but we can't let it be a business to the point that it strangles any artistic endeavour or merit. We have to let voices rise up in this country. And so normally with a film like this, what you'd have to do is you'd have to go and present your case pretty much. It's like the flipping Dragon's Den or something. You have to go and present your case on paper and sit in boardrooms and explain to people why they should give you their money. Quite rightly, I understand that. But inevitably, some of these people that are in the position to give you that money are not going to understand all the different and wonderful worlds that live within this city and indeed this world. And so what the problem with that is that most films just don't even get out of the traps. And so we're starting to see the same films made over and over again. And a film like Jawbone would have struggled if we'd gone about making it in that way. So what we kind of did, I'd like to say cleverly, but it wasn't, it just came from the heart really, was we threw that rule book out. And I started to get people involved, even though we never had any budget. And we were very lucky that people like Paul Weller and Barry McGuigan came on board before we even had funding.
So you had a package.
So then we could go into these people and say, look, your arguments about the fact that this script might not have an audience or that this script might not have this don't stand up, because Paul Weller gets it and Barry McGuigan gets it and Ray Winston's interested and now Michael Smiley's on board and Ian McShane's going to fly over from LA to do it, and they're all seeing something in this script. And so eventually, even the most hard-nosed or uneducated, and when I say uneducated, I mean very educated people, but unexperienced, people, eventually they can't deny that there's something happening with this project, and they go, okay, we're on board. Right. All they really want is for their money to be a safe bet, and that's fair, and I understand that. But I think the process that's the way it is at the moment, the system that's in place at the moment makes it almost impossible for films like this to sneak through. It's
sort of a system that isn't really a system, nevertheless.
Exactly, yeah. It's kind of Emperor's New Clothes. No one's able to challenge it because you can't quite see what's wrong or where it's going wrong. But I've had a little glimpse behind the curtain, and that's where I think the problem lies. And I think somehow we need to encourage these people that, look, their money is safe, and that there are audiences for this. I mean, with the message we've had now for this film is, and the reviews, we've had reviews from tabloids, from the sort of quality broadsheets, the quality film magazines, the independent film magazines, the high-end art magazines, the lads mags, the sports magazines.
It's a great box. Yeah, the boxing's really good in it.
Well, to me that was fundamental. Like you say, I boxed, and some of those people are still my friends now, are great friends, and I would never have been able to show my face again if I'd have gone and made some
sort of punched it.
And also on a more serious level, that fight, hopefully, as with any good storytelling, hopefully, is far more than a boxing match. It's a representation of the final throes of addiction. And what that feels like.
Because we're talking about it like we're putting it together. That's why when I say what motivates you all the way through and keep going all through all the rejections of the money men and all this. Is ultimately it's a story it's about addiction, it's about home, it's about finding your feet and your voice and finding a moment of stillness, I suppose, amid the noises in one's head. And it's exploring paradox, which was those sayings. You can't go into a pitch meeting and say it's about exploring paradox.
And talking about the notion that sometimes you have to give in to win, and they're just like, what, and they just want to see him win the world title,
right.
And
you have that? So, where's the girl crying? Where's the Rocky moment? Why isn't he?
Do you know what? I will say this on this film. We had that early in on the process. I won't say they were, but there was some big development funds within this country that couldn't get it, on that level. We were lucky with this in the sense that there were these huge sort of development funds, if you like,
the normal channels that people might
and they didn't get it, and we ended up leaving them, which was difficult at the time. When you've got these people kind of thinking about going with your film, but not quite getting it. I think the tendency in this country is you stay with them just out of fear of it never getting made. Yeah, and what can happen is I think you end up treading water and you just go under, and like a million films just doesn't get made in the end.
Well, there are bits where you said, all right, I'll do a draft where he does take on the champ, and there is this kind of arc that people want. So
no, I mean I explored it all as a scriptwriter because you're a fool not to. So I explored. There was an estranged wife at one point and a son. There were all sorts of strands to the story that got stripped away. I just wanted to clarify it. I didn't want there to be anything to blame, for this man's addiction. It's an illness. This man has addiction. He has alcoholism, and that's an illness. That's not my opinion. That's a medical fact. Yeah. And so, with that in mind, I didn't want it to be the usual things to blame, and I wanted to subvert that all the way. And so, there's a few things in it where you think, oh, maybe it's because of this, or maybe it's because of that, and it's not. The man has an illness,
which pushes people away from.
Exactly, and it alienates people from him. And let's face it, someone who it's heartbreaking to be around someone like that. Yeah, and so, and I wanted to explore that. And in most boxing films, or in a general narrative of most films, it can often be about a victim. In the middle of this sort of sinister world that's out to get him and poor Jimmy. And I didn't want that in this. I understand that people might think it's that on the first watch, but if you look at it, this man is surrounded by benevolent people who are trying to help him. Yeah. And it's him that can't accept help.
It's the accepting of help.
Yeah.
That's the moment.
And it's confusing because he knows he has willpower. He's a fighter. He's an ex-champion fighter. He knows he has willpower. So why can't he beat this thing? And that's where the paradox comes in, that sometimes you have to learn to give in to win. And that's what I wanted to explore, was that. And so that's why I subvert it at every level. If you think it's because he's losing his home and the council, they're offering him help. Even the weather, it's kind of deliberately, at great expense, much to my producers sort of, we used to have huge arguments over the fact that, it had to rain and stuff in the film, because I explored it. It's on the page in the script is, you think the weather's against him. Yeah. Even, and he thinks it.
The elements conspire.
It's
in his head.
Exactly. Yeah. And yet, if you look back, you realise that weather possibly got him to exactly the place he was meant to go. That cold and that rain forces him into that gym. Maybe the world's working for him, and he just needs to change his perspective and see it from that angle.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like there's a metaphor for acting and for making a film in there as well. I think that's why boxing always does well on set. There is that there is a metaphor for kind of getting stuff over the line and hauling one's carcass. Yeah. Painful though it may be.
And look, the truth of it is, all stories really boil back. If you clarify them all down to their core and you go with the archetypes of storytelling, they all clarify down to 7 stories. And 2 of those are coming home, or the tragedy version, not making it home. Yeah. And Jawbone was going to be one of those 2. It was always going to be one of those 2. And right up until, and I explored different endings with different drafts, but it was always really going to be about a man coming home or not making it home. And I don't want to ruin it. The audience can find out. Either ending's valid. Is the truth of it.
I love the way you got your vision over. As a writer, that's sometimes quite difficult. You're an actor, and it's your personal story partly in there as well. So it had to be the film that I suppose you visioned in your head, but you weren't directing it. You gave that to Thomas Napper, who's a great bloke, and he's a very empathetic filmmaker. That he's worked with Joe Wright on those kind of, and does a lot was for Joe Wright behind the scenes. We
originally, it was going to be Adam Smith, who's and so. Adam was and I made a short film, and that's how this whole thing evolved. But his other film that he was working on for years got greenlit, and so he had to go and do that with Trespass Against Us with Michael Fassbender. So we then had to find a director, and we knew we had to find the right director, because by that point we already had Paul Weller on board. I was deep into training with Barry. I think Ray had certainly read the script, and I was kind of chasing him, or I had every intention of Ray trying to convince Ray to play it. So we were kind of well up and running by that point, and so we knew we had to get the right director that was going to allow. We didn't want some hotshot coming in thinking, that it was, going to be sort of a director-centric movie. We needed someone who was going to come in and allow these elements to combust in a way, and let them become what they're going to become.
Did you fancy doing it yourself at some point?
We thought about that at one point. We We explored every single avenue.
Do you know how to do that?
I've directed in theatre. I came up through the theatre, so I've directed in theatre. I thought I could direct this in the sense that I some of the plays that I do, it was sort of absurdist theatre, and so I love metaphor, and I'm not afraid of metaphor. And on that level, I knew there was something within this that I maybe would be able to direct it from the inside out. I think Paddy's kind of done that with his film Journeyman, and I think that's going to be special as well. Yeah, and so I certainly explored the idea. I just thought first time out, and I thought it was such an intense role, and such a physically and emotionally. That it would be too much to take on, and the money people agreed. So I should say about Thomas actually, we then had to set about getting the right man, and we found him. We just found him. We found someone who came in and didn't try to take over or anything like that. He just directed. Actually, it's like in the true sense of the word, like directing traffic. You know, he had these kind of really fast, loud cars coming at him. Look, you don't go and tell Paul Weller how to do his job. And you don't tell Ray Winston. I knew Ray knew more about this character than anyone else on the planet, and so you don't go in and tell him about his character.
I mean, it's always lovely to see Ray. Even on the stupid betting adverts, it's lovely to see Ray. But sometimes he walks into a part, like he walks on screen, and you go, "That's what you should be playing." In a way, it's easy.
Ray Winston is look. I think there's a thing, right, and I've got to be careful because I don't. It's not. I'm really happy and content in life, and I'm making films, and life's good, So I don't need to get on any soapbox. I'm only saying this because I happen to think it's true. I think there's an element where there is a bit of a sort of a sub-level sort of classism sometimes, and it's fine. I don't think people are doing it maliciously. I think it's just how we've evolved as a generation or as a society. It wasn't around in the 60s. We used to make much more films, great films, which inspired me actually. Films like Get Carter, Saturday Night, Sunday Morning, inspired this film far more than any contemporary films. People keep saying to me, what boxing films inspired you? I was far more inspired by The Loneliness of a Long Distance Runner, and those films is the truth of it, not by boxing films.
And what's the rugby film with Richard Harris?
The Sporting Life. Those are the films that inspired me. We nearly made this in black and white. It's only that we would have got too many comparisons.
It feels like it's in black and
Well, I
white.
wanted to evoke an old London, a fantasy London that this character.
In the same way that Neil by Mouth, which stars feels like it's in black and white. Of course, it's not. But it feels like it is. There's a granite grey.
Yeah, we nearly went there. There was a whole period where I was exploring that, and the only problem would have been it's kind of been done with Raging Bull for very different reasons. But a lot of addicts live in fantasy worlds, and so I wanted to create a fantasy world, and I wanted to kind of create this oldie London that maybe never even existed, but that this character is harking back to.
It's almost Dickensian because he breaks in on the roof. It's kind of like,
and I wanted that. I wanted to evoke like images of him as a little boy, maybe going into that club.
Like Oliver,
Exactly. Yeah, that's intended. That's great that you see that. So my point was about.
But it was about Ray, really, in that class.
Yeah, and the classes thing. I think when the working classes create a piece of work like this, or like Gary did with Nil by Mouth, it's just too easy for people to jump in and go, well, it must be biographical. Well, he must have lived that, And the truth is, like, all storytellers, whether they're from the upper classes, the middle classes, they use their experience in life. And you can construct that around any skeleton that you want. It can be whether it happens to be about a boy wizard at a school, or whether it happens to be about a king making a speech that changes the world. That stops the war. Or it can be about anything, or a little amateur boxing club in London. But these are just canvases to tell stories we're on. So is it a boxing film? Yes. Is it a boxing? It's a film about love and friendship, and compassion and kindness and community. And it happens to be told in a boxing gym. So I wanted to get the boxing. And the reason I say all that is I think with Ray Winstone, I think his performance in Nil by Mouth, which is completely different to this character, or whatever. If he'd have been an American, I truly believe he would have won an Oscar for that.
I do.
The layers within that performance and the depth within it, let alone the sheer veracity and power of it, is on another level. And if anyone's not seen that film, give it a go. And if you have seen it, go and give it another watch now, because it gets better every time you watch it.
It's one of the great British
films. One of the great films. And I don't mind people saying British films, because I think we should be proud of what we make here. But it's one of the great films. Full stop. What Gary Oldman did with that film was something very, very special. And if you're from that area like I am, you realise how many layers there are going on in that film, and just how beautiful it is, actually.
In a sense, it's interesting because Gary put so much of his life and his heart and his soul into that movie, and he's never directed another movie. No. How have you now put such a personal slant on Jawbone? There's so much of heart and soul, even just getting it made, but the performance as well, and even talking to you about it. You put that energy into it. Is this going to be your last, or are you
No.
substituting your old addictions for now making movies? John?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a healthy addiction. You know, I'm certainly going to write again. The second project is in motion. I know what it is that I want to write about, and as soon as I finish this current acting project in August, I'm going to be starting work on that as a writer.
Right.
At the moment, my intention is to direct. Definitely to direct, and there's different avenues around that I'm exploring. But I think the first thing that I'll hopefully direct, if all the elements come together and I don't get hit by a bus when I leave here, will be something that I've written myself. Because, like I say, I'm interested in.
And you got the exact. I could do this now with Jawbone, and no one's going to say you know
possibly.
What,
It seems like the next evolution, hopefully. And like I said, there's other great people out there doing it, like Paddy and others and stuff. And so, look, the truth is, I presume all human beings feel like this. I don't know, but you feel like you have a voice. You know, you feel like you have a voice, and so why would you not want to share that? You know, and make things the way that you see them. You know, give your little interpretation of life. If I was a painter, I'd go and paint it. You know, or if I was a musician and a songwriter, I'd go and write lyrics about it. But I act and I make
You're
films.
A sculptor, but then again, no.
But with tear to my eye with that. I should say there was a physical flourish that went with that as well. That was quite moving. But that's the truth of it. Look, if I was then if this was 1,000 years ago, we'd be sitting around the fire now, and I'd be trying to tell stories there and move people in that way. You know, but look, I'm I've had experiences in life and that sculpt me and have sculpted me, and like everyone, you know, it's made me who I am now, and I like using that within storytelling.
Well, it was a pleasure for me as a long-time fan of yours and a long-time sort of mate of yours as well in these terms.
Mate. Yeah,
to
no,
see
you really are.
Honestly, growing up in front of the screen, it is a towering performance. It's fantastic, and lovely to see you with Ray. And I could see that there's it's your Nil by mouth moment, if I can say that, which is
to even be mentioned in the same breath as that film is about as good as it gets for me, you know. And I will say, you know, and I've said it before, but I'll keep saying it, is you were the first person ever to champion London to Brighton. We made that for £60,000, and a bit like with Jawbone, you know, you then have to go through the challenge of getting it on screens. People can love it, you know, they're loving this film, but if they can't see it on screens, then you know. That's not a good thing. So we're in negotiations now, and it looks like the screens are going to grow with this film, which is great.
Well, it is a movie as well, John. So I will say to anyone, you have to sit on the big screen.
Yeah,
that's
the point.
The big screen, big performances, big actors, big themes, as you've.
Well, we were lucky with London to Brighton. I think after it won the Edinburgh Festival, then it really sort of took off, and it started to get screens. It should have got more, really, but it started to get screens, and that was the beginning of the film's journey. And you were there before Edinburgh, actually, really championing that film. So I appreciated it then, and I appreciate this now.
Well, I will do the same for Jawbone and get it onto more screens. Johnny Harris, absolutely brilliant.
Thanks, Jason.